I've got to admit, I am getting used to the luxuries. Out in the cold with Heidi, we've got some runs. There's a weird patch. If you're skilled enough, which I'm not, let those patches of primer go off a bit and then start chucking this about. The trigger was broken. So I tried another gun that I had in my garage, which broke. There was some reactions. With Lenny fired up and his heaters on to warm the paint, I activated and shook up the 2-pack spray can. Definitely noticed some runs. There's some quite major ones up there. Yeah, a couple more down there. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today you join me from the cockpit of my beautiful girlfriend Kat's 2023 Ford Focus ST line. Now I'm just heading over to the garage where I store Heidi, my hearing aid beige Mk2 Escort Mordor, and I'm not actually sure what I'm going to be getting up to yet. I'll make my mind up when I get there. I could, of course, start prepping the 2-pack primer that I recently put inside her boot so that it's ready to paint beige. But yeah, I'm going to have to see how well or not that primer has dried over the last few days, because it is absolutely freezing here in England at the moment. Although, at least on the way to the garage, I am toast because of this car's heated seats and heated steering wheel. But yeah, if I can't crack on with, you know, prepping inside the boot, then I might look at taking Heidi's rear axle parts and lending them to Maud, my other Mordor Mk2 Escort, so that I can actually think about getting that thing back on the road, so that then Kat doesn't have to keep lending me this car. Although I've got to admit, I am getting used to, as I say, all the luxuries. You know, heated seats and heated steering wheel in the winter is a bonus. Now I've got to send a massive thanks out to my friend Teemu Vartanen from Finland, who's always been really supportive about the channel. Recently he dropped some money into my PayPal account, which I've actually just spent on the paint. I've got some spray paint because I'm going to do inside the boot with rattle cans, but I've also bought some proper paint that will be put on with a gun for Heidi's engine bay and her door shuts, and it might actually be going in very soon to have them bits done professionally. So yeah, massive thanks to you, Teemu. Also, massive shout out and a thanks to Colin, who helped me out with some materials recently as well. And he works for a company called Kent. So yeah, big shout and a thanks to the rest of the guys there. I haven't heard back from my zinc platers yet, but it would be cool if he contacts me today while I'm at my other garage, because the zinc platers is quite close to the other garage. And yeah, then I'll be able to go and pick up the parts that I gave him from Heidi's fuel tank that I've already repainted, and I'll be able to drop off the bits from Heidi's pedal box, which I've also already repainted. So yeah, plenty going on at the moment, you know, with Heidi and the other cars in my busy Ford-based life. And yeah, I'm enjoying cracking on with it all, and of course sharing it with you guys here on the channel. So yeah, I think I'll switch the camera off for now and catch up with you when I get to Heidi's garage. Well, it's time to get out of the warmth and comfort of Lenny's cockpit and out in the cold with Heidi, my hearing aid beige Mordor Mk2 Escort. Gotta be honest, I am really impressed with how the inside of her boot is looking now. The primer seems to have dried okay, and it's actually quite smooth already. So I think today I'm going to crack on with prepping this and getting it ready for paint. There's definitely a couple of bits that are going to need some extra attention. We've got some runs down here. There's a bit over here which I'm not sure if that's a bit of lumpy paint beneath the primer, the original paint, but I'll give that a tickle and see if we can smooth that out. I'm probably going to spend a bit more time on this area. This is where I did the fiberglass and filler work, because this section here was actually cut out and re-welded, but you know, the shape's almost there, and I did put extra primer there. So yeah, I'm going to try and shape that a bit better. And then over here, there's a weird patch, and I wasn't really sure what was going on with this. Just before I left the garage, the day that I primered this, I had a look and saw that that patch was there. By then it was sort of getting dark, so it wasn't as clear as it is now. But yeah, I just went over it with more primer, and then by the time I'd sort of put all my tools back in the garage and, you know, was just about to lock up, yeah, it looked like that again. But Jonathan, who owns the very famous red Mk2 Escort that we went to see at some point last year, actually sent me a text, and he said it looks like there's been a sticker there at some point. And to be honest, I'm absolutely sure that he's right. Definitely looks like sort of the glue residue from a sticker, but I can actually feel it. So I can't believe I didn't notice that before. So yeah, that bit there will get a good tickle with a DA, probably, you know, pretty much take that area back to bare metal, and I can touch up the primer on that area. But yeah, basically the rest of the inside of the boot is going to get prepped with a product that my good friend Rob told me about, and it's this Gold Flex stuff. Basically, you know, it's 500 grit sandpaper, but it's on like a foamy back, which is ideal for when you're doing, you know, areas like inside a boot where there's all different contours. You know, when you're doing like a flat panel, you know, on the outside of the car, then it's much better to use like a solid block, you know, because you want that to be flat like glass. But when you're doing all different contours, like, you know, in these channels and stuff, although you can do those with a block, and if you're skilled enough, which I'm not, you can actually use the block to make shapes like that channel perfect. I think I'm gonna much prefer using this stuff, because for the most part the finish in here is really smooth. So, you know, it's just really a case of smoothing everything out a bit better, and obviously giving the surface a nice key for the beige paint to hopefully stick to and look half decent. The Gold Flex sandpaper leaves the primer really smooth without too much time or effort. So I moved the masking sheet out of the way and got cracking with smoothing out the whole of the inside of Heidi's boot area. I put a little bit more time and effort into the inside of the rear quarters and the central bit of the boot floor, and I spent some extra time trying to smooth out any runs, which actually turned out to be factory runs. I fired up the DA sander to bare metal the area that had the glue residue, and once I'd swept, hoovered and degreased everything, I could really appreciate how smooth the primer now was. And it was just a case of then spraying over the bare metal patches with some epoxy primer. Well, this is actually not looking too bad at all. Really impressed with that Gold Flex stuff. Now, I haven't gone mad with this prep. I've just basically made sure that I've gone over every area, and you know, it was smooth already before I started, but it's a whole lot better now. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would say that I should wet and dry all this. You certainly would wet and dry the primer if you was doing it on the outside of the car, but Rob tells me that for in the boot, you know, just a dry sand with that stuff is enough. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to look okay. I did break through in quite a few places, as you would have just seen. I've put some epoxy primer back over those bits, which is obviously struggling to dry in these really cold conditions. The runs were all actually factory runs from the beige paint, from when this thing was first built. That one over there, a few little ones over there. So I haven't gone mad trying to get them out completely, but they're a bit better than they were. There's actually a couple over here as well. Now, part of me is a bit worried because, you know, when you sort of break through layers of primer and then you start touching things up, in the past I've had issues with things reacting in those situations, but, you know, I didn't want to just leave those bits bare metal and go over with the beige, so, you know, they had to be covered. There might be something beginning to happen over here on this bit, maybe a bit of a reaction. We'll just have to see. I'm going to leave that epoxy primer to dry. I don't know if I'll be able to go over those patches with some 2-pack primer before I leave here. One of the guys actually, I think it was in the comments of a previous video, said that those 2-pack spray cans are actually all right for a week. You know, I just assumed that it would go off in the can straight away if you didn't use it, and I just pulled one out of the bin and sprayed it on the wall, and some paint is coming out, so hopefully that can will be okay for me to go over all these patches of epoxy primer when that dries. And yeah, those areas then will just need, you know, a quick sand with the Gold Flex stuff. And then yeah, I can clean out the whole of the boot again, make sure it's thoroughly clean, and then paint on the beige paint. But one thing I do want to do before I leave here is the seam sealer. Now, I didn't dig out all of the factory seam sealer. You can see it along here and along there. And in the factory, when these cars were built, they weren't tidy with the sealer at all. I think it was just put on with a paintbrush. There was a big lump here that I decided to remove, but yeah, you can see it's all lumpy. You know, that's factory messiness. But there are some bits that were dug out when I was doing the prep work, like along here, because that was quite scabby with rust. So I ended up wire brushing all that along there, you know, a wire brush on a drill. So definitely going to put a nice thick seam back in there, and that will then hide that rust hole there. And I'm pretty sure there's one along here, or it might just be a pit. So yeah, I'll make sure that's thick enough to cover those bits. Need to go round these bits here as well. I'm going to chuck a load down there. That's a factory place. There's a tiny hole in the corner there. So yeah, I'll put a load in there. But I'm also going to put a load around all the previous repairs. You know, I'm not worried about it looking factory. I'll chuck a load up there as far as I can go, in between the arch and the inner arch. So, you know, mainly just in the factory positions and where welding has been done. Yeah, I'm going to go to town on that seam, certainly. And yeah, I'll just, you know, put it around these seams here where Chris Kember did the welding. On INSTA, my Mk2 Escort, we actually used fiberglass to hide welding jobs like this. But I'm determined to not turn Heidi into another INSTA. You know, you've got to draw the line somewhere. INSTA took me like 16 years to build, and yeah, I'm not going through all that again. Now, the seam sealer I'm using is this stuff. I like getting it in a tube because you can just sort of aim it where you want it and then get your brush effect afterwards. The stuff that you get in a tin that you literally have to scoop out of the tin with a paintbrush, that stuff's a nightmare. You can never get it as neat. So yeah, I find this stuff a lot easier to use. So as I say, I'm going to let those patches of primer go off a bit and then start chucking this about. Once I'd loaded the seam sealer into the gun, I instantly realised that the trigger was broken. So I tried another gun that I had in my garage, which broke. I reverted back to the first gun, but with the damaged trigger, I wasn't able to get much pressure out of it. And then I really struggled using a paintbrush to smooth the sealer out. So I had to resort to using my finger instead. This job was way more difficult and took way longer than I was expecting, but I eventually got all the sealing done. Well, that was way more difficult than I was expecting. Yeah, I just wasn't able to use a brush like I have done in the past. It felt like the stuff was going off on me, but you know, it's too cold for that. So yeah, this seam sealer must just be like thicker than stuff I've used in the past, which probably means it does a better job of sealing at least. But yeah, what also made it difficult is the fact that my gun is broke. You know, this bit is bent, so it's not putting enough pressure on the sealer. As you would have seen, I actually broke my other gun. But yeah, what that's meant is I wasn't able to get enough pressure on it to push it right up into there. But to be fair, even if it was after this is painted, I could, you know, get a new gun and get a long nozzle and then squirt something up there. I may actually just chuck a load of wax oil in that bit anyway. So yeah, not the end of the world, but yeah, I had to use my finger basically to finish the seams. You know, it doesn't look pretty, but you know, with a fuel tank there, you're not going to see it. Over this side, I tried to be a little bit more neat, but you know, I am planning to have a spare wheel over there, so you won't see it. And then the bit that I tried to make the neatest is along here. And yeah, once this is all painted beige, I'm not going to care about sealer in the corners. And of course the sealer will keep, you know, moisture out of the joints of the welding repairs and stuff. Got quite a lot of bits of debris that fell off the gun because it's so dirty, But yeah, I don't want to try and hoover them out yet. I want to give those primer patches as long as I can to dry. So I think I'm going to have a bit of a tidy up around here. I've got a lot of tools out that I can put away. You know, I've still got daylight. And then when I've done that, I'll get rid of some of this dust and then see if I can coat those epoxy primer patches with the 2K primer. And then I'm going to get out of here because I can't feel my toes. All right, into another freezing cold day around here at the garage. These really are not the right conditions for painting. Add to that the fact that I don't have long round here because my beautiful girlfriend needs Lenny back because she's got a hair appointment. And add to that the fact that I woke up this morning with a splitting headache. Despite all that though, I am planning to get the beige paint done inside this boot area. I came around here today and I've been roughly tickling the patches of primer that I put on when I broke through the 2-pack primer the other day. Over here, there was some reactions, which is really annoying, but over here there wasn't. And that was the spot that looked like it was going to react the other day. But yeah, these reaction areas, I've just rubbed them back, not all the way to bare metal, as you can see. We'll just have to hope that they don't come through the beige paint. I'm not holding my breath, and if those areas do come up, then yeah, we'll just deal with it then. But yeah, other than that, I've given the whole of the inside of the boot a decent degrease and a hoover out. And yeah, apart from giving it a tack rag, which is basically like a sticky rag that removes the dirt, yeah, I'm ready to activate the 2K spray cans and start spraying this thing. I've actually got said cans inside Lenny, and I've been running the engine with the heaters on just to get some sort of heat into the paint. I will fire Lenny back up in a minute when I'm tack ragging this job, just to, you know, get some heat in the cans, as I say, because, you know, the job's freezing cold, so I may as well at least make the paint warm as it's going on. But yeah, once I've hit this with a tack rag, I'm literally going to go around a couple of times doing a dust coat, and then I'm going to go over it with one heavy coat. Oh, I did decide to semi-prep some of the areas up here. I'm not going to go mad. I definitely won't be painting, you know, all this area back here, but I'm going to hit this front bit and these areas over here near the hinges. I think the hinges themselves I'll actually remove when the actual outside of the car is getting painted and they can get painted properly. But yeah, time for me to cue some more music. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Let's see how this is going to come out. With Lenny fired up and his heaters on to warm the paint, I tack ragged the inside of the boot, then activated and shook up the 2-pack spray can. I covered all the areas of primer with a very light dust coat, which acts as a gripper to make the heavier coats stick better. I started with the areas deep inside the boot and then moved my way outwards, eventually doing the inside of the rear quarters, then the rear panel, and finally the centre section of the boot floor. And it was so cool seeing the inside of the boot slowly turn beige. I gave the job a second dust coat, mainly on the areas that looked a bit thin, and then I gave the whole area a really thick wet coat, starting with the centre of the boot, because that area required the can to be full because I needed to tip it horizontally. Once the final wet coat was on, the job looked amazing and I was very impressed with what I'd achieved. It just looked so much better than I expected. All right, that is all she's getting. I haven't completely run out of paint, but I've run out of paint to the point where the cans will only work when they're upright and they're starting to sort of spit a bit. So I don't want to risk carrying on. I'm going to quit where I am, quit while I'm, it seems, ahead. Yeah, because I don't want to risk like getting blobs everywhere. But it don't look too bad. Definitely noticed some runs. There's some quite major ones up there. Don't know if they're coming across on camera, but yeah, a couple more down there. But for the most part, she's looking pretty good. It's pretty shiny at the moment. We'll obviously have to see how shiny it is when it dries. But yeah, can't complain at all. Definitely good enough for an amateur job inside the boot. But unfortunately, I can't stand here admiring my work for too long because I need to get out of here and get Lenny back to my beautiful girlfriend Kat. Well, to say that I'm happy about getting inside Heidi's boot in paint would be a huge understatement. I'm really happy with how it looks like it's turned out. We will of course have to wait to see how it looks when it's dry. But I'm certain that for inside the boot, and considering the conditions I was working in, and considering I've done it with spray cans, yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely fine. Now, once I've actually got the engine bay and the door shuts painted on Heidi, then I can really move forward with the project. And in fact, the current plans are to send the car to my good friend Rob to have the engine bay and the door shuts painted in about 2 days. So yeah, really looking forward to getting those bits done. I think before I do send it to Rob, I'm gonna borrow some of Heidi's rear axle parts so that I can try and get moored back on the road. And whilst Heidi is with Rob, I'm gonna crack on with painting some other bits, you know, satin black, so that I've got a load of stuff ready to bolt back onto Heidi when she comes back to me. So yeah, plenty for me to do, and plenty of content coming up on the channel for you guys to watch. Now, I was going to end this video by going back around to the garage here at home and having another go at seeing if I can figure out why ESTA, my ST170 powered Mark 1 Escort, isn't running right. I've literally been inundated with messages and comments from some of you guys with your suggestions, so massive thanks to everyone who has reached out. But I've got so many things to try, and there's something that I want to do on ESTA that involves her ECU. So I think I'm just going to do all of those bits in one day and make a whole video out of all of that. And that will probably be the video after next. So yeah, fingers crossed we get to the bottom of ESTA's issues very soon. So for now, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new. We actually reached 19,000 subscribers recently, which is awesome. So massive, massive thanks to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. Check out my website for merchandise and car parts. Massive thanks as always to all my patrons for your ongoing support. I'll leave all the links to everything in the description as usual, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.